I'm a big fan of getting more for less, and doubly so when it comes to watches. It's no secret that it's getting harder and harder to find good watches that don't cost a bomb, so I've saved you the effort and found a selection of absolute bargains that offer way more than the price point would suggest. The last one I really like. Before I unveil the first watch, a little housekeeping if I may. The word bargain is defined as a thing bought or offered for sale much more cheaply than is usual or expected, and cheap as low in price, especially in relation to similar items or services. So if I say something is a bargain or is cheap, that is in relation to what's typically expected for the price point. For example, I just bought a helicopter and it only cost $500,000. Wow, what a bargain! That's so cheap! Yeah, one celebrity owner, only a few repairs needed, so no telling me the watches aren't cheap or a bargain in the comments. Okay? Okay. You're going to do it anyway, aren't you? Anyway, here's our first watch, and it's what a Bremont would look like if they didn't use an Etch-a-Sketch. There's a mix of flavours here, like the 30s cushion case shape that went on to make Panerai so famous. IWC Portuguese applied hour markers that are basically the world's most expensive and delicious alphabetti spaghetti, and a combo of silver and blue that's got George Clooney looking to bring his batsuit out of retirement. It's one of several designs available in Farah's beautifully alliterative cushion case collection, which ranges from copper tones to emerald greens and even, well, there's a white one as well, that's it. But what's really got my cats in a flap about the curious case of the cushion case collection is the perceived value. What do I mean by perceived value? It's like when you use the drop shadow tool in Keynote to make it look like you worked harder on your presentation than you did. The expense is not necessarily great, but those around you think otherwise. How do we quantify this? With the overly familiar coworker test. If they see your watch and say nothing, it's in keeping with their perception of you. If they say, "Nice watch," what they really mean is, "Hey asshole, how did you afford that watch?" But if the watch looks so expensive they just can't hold it in anymore, they'll say something like, "Someone's getting paid too much," and they'll laugh like it's a joke even though we know they're not joking and that just beneath the surface they're imagining you, your home and everything you love in it all burning to the ground. That's the level we're aiming at with the blue and silver Lethbridge. Bonus points if it's literally the first thing that coworker has ever said to you. How does Farah do it? It's simple really. Nice materials with nice finishes in nice colours, designed nicely. The 38.5mm case is shiny, and shiny is good. Shiny means expensive. Jewels are shiny, and crowns, and fast cars. I'll tell you what's not shiny. Scaffolding, cardboard and rats from the sewer. It's easy to see how the perceived luxury works, in this case, quite literally. The hands and markers too are shiny, and bluer than famously expensive shiny thing, sapphire. Then the dial gets brushed finishes, polished would end up being more face than dial if you catch my drift, that go in different directions, so no matter what angle, you're catching the light and it looks nice and you got it. Shiny. There's other details too, like the bronze crown cap and manually wound solita caliber that keeps thickness down to 10.5mm, which only go to make the watch seem even nicer. And then there's the nice to haves, like the sapphire crystal and reasonable 50-meter water resistance. What's completely unreasonable is the price, which at just £895 on the strap will be getting a lot of bosses double checking how much their Farah-wearing employees are getting paid. One of the absolute nicest dive watches in the world ever is the Glaciter Original CQ, which is absolutely a contraction of sea cucumber. Unfortunately, Glaciter Original is the Segway of the watch industry. Literally everyone wants one, but I don't know a single person who actually bought one. Also, people consider one then move on to something else. Homonyms. It's not a cheap watch, the Sea Cucumber, at £9,200, and for those who want to spend exactly 6.13 times less, I draw your attention to the Airain Sous-Marine re-edition, a revival of an old watch brand and its dive and pilot watch collections. You don't need a French to understand that the Sous-Marine is the diver, which quite literally translates to the smash hit song from Disney's The Little Mermaid, Under the Sea. As the song says, "Darling, it's better down where it's wetter, take it from me." And that's what this Airain is all about. It's also how you get crabs. So for 1,500 of your land-lubbing pounds, the Sous-Marine gives you that blocky 38mm stamped case, big loomed markers and hands so broad you could iron your shirt on them. You can choose from a suite of dials, from solid black to a gradient blue, and even a few faded colours like brown, blue and grey, complete with a date in alternating black and red and wrapped in a single-piece unidirectional bezel with 120 clicks. The second hand is the Chevy Express driver's favourite, the Lollipop, but there's also a singular edition edition featuring the original style second hand, which Airain refers to as DNA. Although if I was going to be anal about it, I'd say it looks more like a string of beads. Water resistance is, of course, dive-worthy at 200 meters, and that's thanks to the redevelopment of the Parmentier crown. Parmentier, as it turns out, is not a kind of cheese, but a crown cap that seals completely over the top of the actual crown. This is historically accurate, and, let's be honest, really fucking annoying. You can get spares for like £20 at least. La Perret are keeping it real with the caliber G100 for 68 hours of power reserve and a thickness of just 10.5mm, all things that further go to make the Sous-Marine a delectable dive decision for those passing on Primo to save some sweet Skrilla. Psst. Come a little bit closer. Lean in a bit. Yeah, that's it. What if I told you there was a watch out there with a Grand Fouet enamel dial, sapphire case and flying tourbillon for just $1,580? I'd imagine you'd say, remind me what Grand Fouet is again? Okay, so this is the Manilone Model G1, and it packs in a suite of features that scarcely seem believable for the price. If you guessed from the god-awful brand name that this watch hails from the land of tea and white porcelain, China, you guessed right, and that's why you get so much for so little. The Grand Fouet enamel dial, as in glass powder melted with heat into a smooth, shiny surface, comes in red, green or blue, and is left relatively unscathed so owners can better appreciate the enameliness of it. Even the hands are hollowed out to provide minimal interference. Its pristine nature is only interrupted by the whacking great big hole through which a whizzy tourbillon peeps through, a caliber from Hangzhou, the same watchmaker that provides Baltic with its micro rotor. Not only does it tourbillon up front, it skeletonizes round back too, revealing the twin barrels that give it its 60-hour power reserve. Whatever preconceptions you have of Chinese movements, this one's actually decent. I won't promise you chronometer precision, but it won't blow up in your face either. So for $890, you can get this watch with the 43mm case in stainless steel, but go for the full $1,580 and you can switch to sapphire. The bezel and case size are a monoblock piece of sapphire, with the case back complete with its own sapphire window in steel and carrying the equally steel lugs for a total thickness of 12.9mm. Where the sapphire case comes into its own is with the view through the side, which offers a look of the tourbillon caliber that's completely unfamiliar. If you like peeping through small windows, this one's for you. It's another day, and that means another budget-busting bonanza from Singapore-based Zelos watches, this time with the Spearfish Duel Time, a watch that endeavours to give you $10,000 feels for just $1,849. I'm talking big-ass date, dual time zones and a lightweight titanium case, but there's even more to this watch than first meets the eye. I don't mean it has a whole load of unpaid parking tickets and a secret second family living in Tampa, more that the specification for this watch goes deeper than might be appreciated, more even than Zelos really needed to go. Unlike many watches that make do with the fine Sellita SW200, this gets the SW300, which is a millimeter thinner, and that means more room for activities, such as fitting the same Technotime TT651 module found in the $4,000 Bell & Ross BR0351 GMT, while still keeping the watch under 13mm. Not only does that give you an independently adjustable hour and minute hand in the subdial, there's also a 24-hour day-night disc too, so you can be extra sure not to wake grandma from the other side of the world, or to deliberately wake her up, depending on how you feel. The dial is clearly made of sapphire, so the magic of the big date is revealed, including the vestigial first digit wheel, which so desperately wants to be as important as the second wheel but really just doesn't have as much to offer. You're doing great, champ. And the whole thing is loomed. The hands and markers on the main dial and the subdial, the big date, the globe, almost everything. In the dark, the watch lights up like a Ferrari dash. It'll take a while to notice that, but it'll take even longer to notice the hardened coating on the titanium, and it should never be noticed that the movement ring inside is made of forged carbon to further reduce the weight. If you want the curtains to match the drapes, you can have the whole thing in forged carbon for the same $1,849. Any watch named Spaceship already has my attention, and throw in a rotating satellite display and now I'm hardly going to say no. This is the Atowak Spaceship, and yes, it looks like C-3PO's codpiece, but in a good way. If you're familiar with the standard way of telling time, then this thing might make as much sense as a dog with a gun, but actually reading it is pretty easy. There are 3 satellite wheels, each carrying 4 of the 12 numbers usually displayed around the outer perimeter of a watch, and at some point in the day, each one of those numbers will pass casually by the minute scale at the bottom. Along its journey, that hour will point, by way of a nubbin or niblet if you will, at the minutes as it passes, thus allowing the clear and correct reading of both the hour and minute. It's a design borrowed from the masters of mechanical mayhem, or Verg, who've been trying to convince watch buyers to adopt an alternate steampunk lifestyle since 1997. £100,000 plus prices have somewhat neutered the outreach of that particular campaign, but nevertheless it's always fun to try and guess which brand of glue they'll be sniffing next. So why make such a meal of the already solved problem of telling the time? Because otherwise we'd have to think about reality instead, which is full of war and snakes and taxes. No thanks. Instead, peer into the center of the spaceship's movement to discover how this overwhelming complication is in fact powered by a simple Myota 9039. How is such a feat possible? The entire carousel that carries the hour wheels turns with the movement, with each of the wheels advanced by a static pin in the top half of the dial as they go by. It's a very clever and elegant solution, and it's why Atowak can replicate such a visibly complex thing. Yes, it's big, and yes, it's thick, and you'll definitely look like an employee of Vault-Tec wearing it, but that's okay. At £1,549, you'll get to experience some truly ludicrous watchmaking for a fraction of the cash. If you like your wild watchmaking with the security of Swiss made, however, then perhaps you'll be more taken with the bell? I don't know, it's like BA for ba, 3 1s, and then OD. I'm assuming it's like ballad and not like ball-lod, but who knows. The edgy naming convention returns for the model, which is CHPTR_triangle symbol.3. Here I believe they mean Chapter Delta 3, by which they really mean it's the 3rd in the Delta series. If only words had been invented to make communicating easier. Next time, don't let Coldplay name your watches. But we're here now, we made it, and waiting to pounce is an unsolicited maths lesson. Yes, maths, not math, like stats, not stat. I want to talk to you today about cycloids. That's nothing Lance Armstrong would be interested in, but the path traced by a single point on a rolling circle. Like, you know how when you get a stone stuck in your tyre and it goes tack 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 down the road? Imagine the pattern traced by that stone, and not just how annoying it is and how you want to drive the car off a cliff to stop it. Now let's level up from a cycloid to a deltoid, where instead of rolling the circle along a flat plane, we do so inside another circle. So now you're driving around a wall of death. What pattern will that stone trace this time? Well, if the small circle is 1/3 the diameter of the larger, you'll get a triangle, hence the name deltoid, which comes from the Greek letter delta, which looks like a Oh, I get why the watch is called that now. So instead of a run-of-the-mill pointy hour hand, there's an hour indicator that represents the stone stuck in the tyre, as it traces a triangular deltoid around the inside of the corresponding track. The whole thing is powered by a manufacturer module built onto a Soprod M100 within a 44mm steel case for a time-reading experience that's akin to dropping acid in a hall of mirrors. But don't let me explain what that's like. Let Ballbag tell you instead. Chapter Delta brings a duality between the circular time of the minutes and the hypocycloidal time of the hours. This asymmetrical reading of time, which slows down and starts again like a choreography, is part of another temporality, symbolizing the carousel of life. In English, that means £2,280. From the downright futuristic to something a little more classical in nature, I present to you the Lebois Co Heritage Chronograph, brought to you by the good people from the Airain a few minutes ago. This is another revived brand, here drawing from the stunning good looks of 1940s chronographs. As the old saying goes, if it ain't broke, let's sell it some more and make some cash, and that's exactly what the guys at Lebois are doing. I can just imagine them now, after a successful day of making and selling watches, out on the town together chanting, "La boys, la boys, la boys, la boys, la boys." And that's exactly what you'll think about every time you see the brand from now on. You're not going to find revolution here, but what you are going to get is quality components assembled in what is effectively your chance to own a beautiful vintage watch without bricking it every time there's a strong breeze. Sapphire crystals front and rear contain a hand-wound La Joux-Perret chronograph, protected to 50 meters of water resistance within a 39mm wide, 10.5mm thick stainless steel case. If that previous Bullrog brings the duality of circular time to the hypochondriac of the hours, the Lebois brings just a very nice watch. It's a cliche to say it's all in the details, but that's okay because this watch is 100% a cliche of those details. Choose between Breguet numerals, Art Deco styling, or a military spec telemeter, leaf hands, pencil hands, blued or in gold. It's a lineup of every culprit of vintage aesthetic, and were it put together with the same sense of care and consideration as Action Park, it would be thrown in the pile with the live-action Little Mermaid and all the other cash grab remakes. Disney just couldn't recapture Sebastian's raw sexual energy. And as of this moment, according to the adaptive currency converter pricing on the Lebois website, the Heritage Chronograph will cost you €2,777 for a high-quality Swiss-made chronograph. Lebois are back in town. Join me, if you will, in the fantastical world of Nicholas Bowman Scargill, a man so dapper they changed the definition in the Oxford English Dictionary to Nicholas Bowman Scargill. He'd put on a tie to go to the bathroom, never leaves the house without a pocket square, and I'm pretty sure he's running moonshine between Bristol and Henley-on-Thames for the Mafia. He also had a great-great-great-granddad, as many of us did, who started a watch company in 1823 that fell by the wayside and became little more than print in a history book. Nicholas thought that was a bit of a shame, and so in 2016 he re-established his triple-great-grandpappy's business from the ground up, and today he's bringing us this, the £3,150 Redcliff. Now before you say to me, whoa there Andrew, you promised me the good times, the bargains, the cheap, I want to paint you a picture of the Redcliff, if I may. Imagine a watch, but like, it's really good. Like, better than £3,150 good. Yeah? Okay, fine, I owe you more than that. How about this then? I will at some point be featuring this watch in a video called 10 watches that are as good as Rolex in their quality but don't cost anywhere near as much. That's a working title. The point is that the Redcliff pops with the same crisp clarity as an Oyster Perpetual, but it costs about £2,500 less. You know me, I would never, and never ever will, ever exaggerate anything, ever. And I really believe the quality of the Redcliff meets that of Rolex. It's a polished and brushed stainless steel case at 39.5mm with a very Omega bracelet and a La Joux-Perret G100 that's protected to 150 meters. Can you get cheaper watches with that spec on paper? You absolutely can, but they won't have the clarity of this. It's like when you wipe the hand juice off your camera phone and improve your picture quality 1000%. The Redcliff just pops like it's got better signal or something. It's the premium subscription with higher bitrate and full HDR. It's a tough one to reconcile on screen, but thankfully Fears now have a boutique in Bristol where you can go and try one for yourself. I made the mistake of calling it a shop once, and only once. I'm going to be real with you for a moment because I think this is the time and place to be real. I like things. I know I'm supposed to be fulfilled by sunshine and ducklings and all that crap, but the problem is that I just like things, and things are expensive. Take the Royal Oak Openwork for example. That's a thing. So I like it. But it doesn't like me. It wants to kick me out of my home and break up my marriage, and I have to work very hard not to let it do that. Sometimes at night, I hear it telling me to do awful, awful things, but so far I've been able to resist. So far. Ever the considerate and selfless type, Christopher Ward is here to help with the 12X, or as I like to call it, the Twellerton. It takes Christopher Ward's format for the 12, which reminds me of when a school kid hands in homework with the word indubitably in it and insists their parents didn't help. Engine swaps the Solita for the in-house Caliber SH21 and then goes ham with the CNC machine. I say it like that because, with a lot of lessons learned from the Bel Canto, which does feature hand finishing, Christopher Ward realised that humans are weak and feeble, and so the Twellerton brings a high level of skeletonization and finishing, including diamond cut bevels, applied purely by machine. Of course, we'd all prefer for it to be handmade, but the reality is that even the big boys are doing almost nothing these days by hand. In fact, with Audemars Piguet, you have to be spending open work money to get a human to touch it. The quality achievable by machine has experienced its own Moore's law of sorts, with finer tolerances and better finishes possible straight from the cutting bit. The advantage here is a reduction of cost, and that's exactly what Christopher Ward set out to achieve with the Twellerton. The bridges aren't just skeletonized, they're beveled too, and those bevels gleam like freshly laid snail trails along the edges of the movement. As an exercise in what-ifs, it's realised its goal and then some, bringing an excess to the level of finishing achieved in the £10,000 Zenith Defy skeleton for just a fraction of the price, at £3,750 on the rubber strap. You also get the 41mm by 12.3mm thick case in titanium, and there's a bracelet version too for £4,120. You can definitely tell the parents helped because they've stuck a big label in the back so Christopher Ward doesn't lose it. It genuinely pleases me to find stuff like this next watch because it's exactly the kind of thing I dream of owning that usually costs in excess of 100,000. 100,000 in which currency? Doesn't matter, I can't afford them all equally. What does matter is that fancy watchmaker Theo Ofay and Nevada revivalist Guillaume Lede are back at it again for the next installment in the Spaceone series. And if the first was number 1, then this feels more like 2 to the power of 10. And those who know me best know I don't use exponents lightly. With the last watch, we saw a jump hour complication added to a basic movement, and that was pretty cool. Now say hello to the Tellurium, which really confused me until I realised I was thinking of an Arboretum. With this, we get a frickin' solar system on the wrist, with the sun in the centre and the Earth whizzing around in orbit. The mechanically minded will be thinking, yeah, but stick a ball in the middle and a ball on the hour hand and hey presto, you've got the same thing. But hold your cynicism, because there's more. Not only does the Earth here take a full year to orbit the Sun, the proof is in the month counter that follows along at the bottom, but there's also a Whittle moon that goes around the Earth as well. This whole ensemble is set against an aventurine background and is just an absolute treat to look at. I mean, it even tells the time. Look, there's an hour hand and a minute hand too, somewhere. Once again, all this is achieved by building on top of a basic SOP rod movement, the P024. Yes, setting it isn't going to be the work of a minute, and probably not even an hour, but it kinda doesn't matter when you get such a cool thing to look at like this. And it's not just good to look at, but to wear as well, because despite the titanium case measuring up at 50mm by 16mm thick, it doesn't wear like that at all. It's surprisingly dainty. Sounds wrong, but actually, it's right. You get all this ultra cool, ultra original watchmaking for €2,990, which is less than the international measuring metric of a single black bay. I find that to be very impressive for a watch like this. It won't be to everyone's taste, I know that much, but I do believe that we should all universally find this achievement to be one that is very, very satisfying indeed. What's the best value for money watch you've seen here today, and indeed at all? Let me know down in the comments. And if you want to help support what I do, you can join these lovely people over at my Patreon. Link in the description. Thank you for watching, and remember, although you have to put money in the supermarket trolley to use it, the scrap value is worth a lot more. See you next time.